You know that quiet confusion that us Filipinos we feel when we first encounter Western psychology. So we hear words like boundaries, people pleasing, gratitude, and they sound so familiar. But I know that something somewhere in your body, it kind of feels off. Like the explanation almost fits, but not really all the way. And you may even wonder, why does this make sense in theory, but I do not feel it in my body? And that confusion isn't because we are resisting healing. I remember those feelings a lot of times when I was going through my anxiety growing up. And it's because much of Filipino behavior has been interpreted through frameworks that were never designed for us. Meanings were translated, but the cultural logic underneath you know, was not really thoroughly explained. And this is where Psikologiyang Pilipino or Filipino psychology really becomes relevant and where we really, really need to hone in and understand. Not as a trend or not as an alternative modality, but really as a correction, like a lens to really look at ourselves in the right context. Psikolohiyang Pilipino articulated most clearly by Virgilio Enriquez, who is, by the way, the father of Filipino psychology, is not Western psychology translated into Tagalog. It's psychology that begins inside our Filipino language, history, and social structure. And so there's so many different scholars call this indigenous from within, understanding Filipino behavior through Filipino concepts. And instead of forcing it into imported categories, right? And once you see this, something important settles, something shifts. And you realize that Filipino psychology was never incomplete, it was misread. So, take for instance, hiya is simply not shame. If you look at it in Western psychology, shame is often understood as a negative internal emotion tied to self worth. So when a Filipino hears this, that hiya means shame, the conclusion is often, this is something I need to get rid of. But hiya, it doesn't really work like that. In Psikolohiyang Pilipino, hiya is better understood as relational awareness. It's a sense of propriety, context, and social attunement. And of course, like when we were colonized, this was all distorted. But I want you to notice something. Notice how its meaning shifts depending on the use. So when you say mahiyain, it means shyness. When you say napahiya, it means being placed in embarrassing situation. When you say kahihiyan, which can mean embarrassment or moral impropriety. And hiya isn't just one emotion, it's our social compass. So when it's reduced to toxic shame, something essential disappears. It's moral and relational intelligence. Have you noticed how healing advice often asks you to eliminate hiya without asking what protected you when you had no other power? And now I want to go to another one, a really big one. And whenever we post this on our social media page, oh boy, we get a lot of responses. Let's talk about utang na loob. Utang na loob is not transactional debt. Utang na loob is often translated as this, as debt of gratitude. And through a Western lens, that sounds transactional. And again, it was used against us during the colonization period, right? Obligation, repayment, guilt. But that's not how utang na loob actually functions. If you look at it in the Filipino psychology lens, utang na loob reflects relational solidarity. And that debt, it's not financial. Ang utang na loob ay tinatanaw, hindi binabayaran. It's not calculated. And there is no material, transactional, kind of like quid pro quo thing that's going on. It's not meant to be paid off. It points to an enduring bond, one that can extend across time and even generations. What's preserved isn't balanced, it's relationship. So when utang na loob is framed only as obligation, Filipinos are taught to see their relational nature as a liability instead of a survival system. And if this tension around gratitude, guilt, and self care feels familiar, you might find Navigating Filipino Boundaries helpful. That's a free ebook that I made. It's for a Filipino inner child's companion to guilt that helps untangle care from self erasure without rejecting family altogether. The link is going to be in the description and it's totally free for you. Okay, I know you have heard of this word. It's called pakikisama. Pakikisama is not the highest value, though. Pakikisama is often described as conformity or conflict avoidance. And this misreading, again, has quietly shaped stereotypes that Filipinos are passive, agreeable, or afraid to stand alone. But in our Sikuluhiyang Pilipino, pakikisama is not the core value. It's one level of social interaction. And the prefix paki signals a request. It's kind of like saying please. Will you share space with me? Pakikisama means being along with, not surrendering our moral judgment. So, a Filipino who refuses corruption may be accused of lacking pakikisama, but never lacking humanity. And that's because pakikisama only makes sense inside a deeper framework. And that framework is kapwa, which is the core of Filipino psychology. Kapwa is often translated as other, but that translation misses the point entirely because kapwa means shared identity. It assumes that the self is not separate from you. Like I am not separate from you, but fundamentally relational. So within kapwa, people are understood in two broad categories. There is the ibang tao, which means outsiders, and then there's the hindi ibang tao, one of us. Filipino social life often involves moving relationships from distance towards shared identity. And this movement happens through recognized level from basic civility to participation to trust and ultimately to pakikiisa, which means oneness. So pakikisama sits in the middle. It is not the goal, it's the threshold. What if our nervous system learns safety not through independence, but through belonging? And if this idea of shared identity feels older than Western psychology, you might resonate with the free ebook that we made called Discover the Pre-Colonial Philippines. This is an amazing ebook that my daughter and I made. My daughter is a creative and she helped me make this beautiful pre-colonial ebook, and it's free. It's a gentle doorway into how our ancestors understood healing, responsibility, and relational life long before colonization. The link is going to be in the description. And so I wanted to go to another core concept. If you wanted to go a little deeper, it's called loob, which means the inner self that is never isolated. So if Kapwa explains how Filipinos relate to others, loob explains how Filipinos understand the inner self. And loob refers to one's interior, intention, morality, emotion, will. Here's the key difference though. The loob is never isolated. Language makes this visible. We have kagandahang loob, inner goodness expressed outwardly. We have lakas ng loob, inner strength. We have utang na loob, obligation rooted in inner self. And then we have pakikipagpalagayang loob, meaning placing inner selves at ease with one another. And so in Filipino psychology, the inner world is never private property. It is relational, it is moral and socially embedded, which is why healing that focuses only on me, myself, and I can feel so strange for us. It's like strangely hollow. And if you're in a season of wanting to heal gently at your own pace, learning how to hold your inner child with compassion rather than force, I made this ebook called Roots and Rebirth. You can use it. It's a 30-day Filipino inner child healing journey rooted in Sikuluhiyang Pilipino, which we're talking about in Kapwa and decolonized wisdom. And so these concepts developed inside a society by collective survival, kinship networks, and our shared responsibility. And our colonial interpretations stripped them of context. And by the way, they also used it against us, right? And all of those remnants of like the colonial interpretations are still staying with us. And so that's why it is important for us to talk about this, reframing relational intelligence as emotional weakness and communal survival as personal deficiency. Psikolohiyang Pilipino restores the original structure. It doesn't explain Filipino behavior as a deviation from Western norms, but as a coherent system rooted in shared identity, relational awareness, and moral interiority. And this framework doesn't replace other psychologies, it explains something they cannot. And this is where the explanation stops. Because understanding Psikolohiya Pilipino doesn't begin with changing yourself. It begins with realizing that Filipino psychology was never missing, it was only misread. And if you're noticing that healing feels especially wrong inside Filipino families, like choosing yourself feels like betrayal, like you're not imagining the tension. And if you're realizing you don't want to carry this alone anymore, check out the Helam Collective. That's our membership here at the Brown Psych. And that's our circle. And this is like where we gather together as community to process the things that we've been through. Because that's where like the healing happens, right? In the collective. And if you've ever felt like lunod ka na with emotions you weren't allowed to feel, you're not broken. You are overflowing with feelings that were never given space. Healing means learning to breathe again, slowly, one honest emotion at a time. So, I want you to watch this video next. It's called Why Healing Feels Wrong in Filipino Families. This is also a deeper look at how love, loyalty, and guilt became entangled, and why choosing yourself can feel like disobedience. Again, this is Dr. Net saying maraming salamat and reminding you that our healing is our resistance. I'll see you in the next one.